This week on the Notorious Scoundrels podcast.
The FD turret is really important where it goes. And then you just continue to stick it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a podcast focused on tactics and competitive play for Star Wars Legion. Hosted by Kyle Dornbos, Michael Barry, and David Zelenka, with Jay Shalansky, the man behind the glass.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Mike and David. How you guys doing?
Awesome.
Doing pretty good. I'm ready to talk some Legion.
Yep. The weather here is crappy. It's cold and rainy.
It's going to snow this week.
Yeah, and supposedly. I don't know that I know it's going to stick, but as per usual with the DC area, everyone is going to flip out and there's going to be a million crashes, even though it's like functionally the same as rain.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how it goes. It's great.
Yep.
It's just like Central New York. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Rain makes everybody crazy.
Yeah, or snowflakes, even if they don't actually like our snow by the time they hit the ground. All right. Well, let's just launch straight into news.
Welcome to In the News.
So Adepticon tickets went on sale yesterday as we're recording this, and 2 days ago, probably by the time people listen to this. Did you guys get your tickets?
Yeah, man. I got it all. I got the premium thing. I got the very important guest thing. I'm all over the place. It's fantastic.
Did you though? Because I tried it at 11:30 and it was all gone. I'm on the wait list for the premium badge, and I didn't end up getting the VIG.
Well, I mean, like, you just get put on the list for VIG, right?
So, yeah. It's a raffle anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the premium thing sold out in like 4 minutes. It was gone.
It was fast, yeah.
Yeah, super fast.
My wife was very understanding. I'm like, I need to be at the computer at 2:00. Yeah,
I didn't feel like getting on my phone in church to sign on.
I've been fairly
buy a
obnoxious,
ticket.
probably.
Yeah.
Anyway, so notably, if you are planning on participating in the Legion event, which is the entire thing, at least the main event, is invite only based on the world's structure. Of course, you could not sign up for that on Sunday. So apparently, there's going to be an article. Just a heads up, if you have a Worlds invite, there's supposedly going to be an article coming out tomorrow, Tuesday, by the time you listen to this. Hopefully, was supposed to be last week, and now is possibly Tuesday. So keep a lookout for that. Basically, you can go on there and like input your information and indicate a preference for which of the two heats you want to be in. There's one on Thursday and one on Friday, and then there's like a cut. Basically, everyone that goes 3 and 1 or better will make Saturday, which is going to be roughly 50 people, and then the top 4 from that day will go on to Sunday. So, but yeah, good. Once that article comes out, they'll have supposedly more instructions in there about how all that's going to work and how you can sign up for a heat. So
It's going to be fantastic.
yeah, I mean, it sounds like you can indicate a preference for a heat, but there's no guarantee you'll get it, which I guess makes sense because they could have as many as 200 people doing this, and I'd imagine most people are going to indicate Friday for preference for travel reasons. So, they can't have 150 people on Friday and 50 people on Thursday. So, don't be shocked if you put Friday and you get Thursday. But anyway, yeah, I'm excited that we're like actually at the point where we're getting real Adepticon action items. It's exciting.
I'm just worried because I have no idea what the hell the game is going to look like by March. So
I mean, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Like
yes and no.
An unsolved meta is a good thing.
For the community, yes. For the player, no.
Well, it's just more work for us, but then we wouldn't have anything to talk about, right?
That's fair.
We can't just talk about tauntauns and shores for the next 3 months.
I mean, we could.
Oh,
Just to be clear.
I can. Yeah. I mean, I do on my streams, but but anyway, your point is well made. If there was just a static meta, it would be pretty boring very quickly. So
well, and there is I mean, in theory, at least according to the revised, edited schedule that they've put out, there's a literal boatload of things coming out in January. So, and then maybe tanks still in February. I don't know.
Yeah, that's sort of unclear.
Yeah, not super clear. It's definitely not clear what's going to be legal for LVO, and it's even less clear what's going to be legal for Worlds. But I think that's a good thing at the moment that we have no idea. So, yep. Any other thoughts on that?
No.
All right.
I'm sad I won't be able to get hip checked by a trash can by the end of January.
That was a pretty awesome moment.
That was.
So actually, let's just segue straight into Invader League. Kingsley did defeat Technophobia to earn a spot in the top 4 for Invader. So we are now down to 4. And he did so with a hip check from R2D2. It was a pretty epic last turn, actually. Bosk was in a position to like drop Merciless munitions on the center and kill like 3, possibly 4 activations. Kingsley had 3 sniper teams basically prepared to rush the middle objective. But Bosk had to take a move to get in range of all of them. So Kingsley played Blast Off and 1 priority, and then meleeed Bosk with R2.
Right.
To lock him in
He
place.
diverted from the secret mission to engage Bosk.
Yeah.
To keep Bosk from bombing in the right place.
Yeah, it was pretty clever. It was an epic end to the game. It was a situation that he wouldn't have been in if he'd taken an extra move action, Bosk, on the previous turn. But
right,
you know, hindsight is 20/20. I'm sure he didn't see the wild R2 blasting off over a building to.
I don't think most people did. I was like just lurking in chat, and when Kingsley moved R2 into like attack Bosk, there was several people that were like, "Oh my god, this is the worst play ever," and that like turned around like an hour later and were like, "Oh my god, that was the best play ever."
Right, it was super brilliant actually in hindsight, and I saw it because I kind of saw that being right because Kingsley was trying to go for the a 1-point victory where he would contest 2 objectives and just win on the 1 KP that was completely uncontested in his backfield. And it was the best move, and it was not obvious, and just a really brilliant piece of innovation by Kingsley there.
I mean, to be fair, R2 should have been super dead.
Right, because Bosk should have meleeed him for more than 1 hit.
Yes.
Which R2 then dodged because he had Blast Off. And then because R2's a droid trooper, he's not affected by Dioxys poison. So he literally couldn't be killed after that.
I think the likelihood that he dies there is actually like, I mean, it's probably a lot closer to a coin flip than I'm giving it credit for, but I mean, a coin flip's not a bad probability, you know.
It's probably about 60-40.
Yeah, like, so I mean, like, clearly not the odds you want to bet your game on, but if you're like, you know, looking for outs, a 60% out is not terrible.
Yeah, it was a complete Hail Mary. Like there was no, I mean, Kingsley was basically dead without that melee tie up. Because of the Bosk, well, the misplay, right? Like if Bosk had taken the triple move off of Reptilian Rampage, he would have been in the right place, regardless of R2D2.
Yep, and then he kills 3, if not 4 units, and you know, scores,
wins the game.
Yeah, right. Anyway, so congrats to Kingsley. I now have to play him, so we get a rematch from last season. This will actually be, I think, our official rubber match because he beat me at High Command. I beat him last Invader, and then this will be our 2 out of 3 basically. So
there's
cool.
A lot of pressure here because, you know, Tauntauns. This is the test. This is the major test.
Yeah, this was my like part of the purpose of playing the list that I did, which I've talked about already. But essentially, it's a Jedi Luke gunline. Is like I feel pretty good about it against Empire matchups, but can it handle triple Tauntauns? And Kingsley has obviously a very skilled pilot, but also has one of probably the best optimized versions of a triple Tauntaun list that's out there. So we'll see. I don't feel great about the list matchup. It'll be a good test of Jedi Luke gunline.
Yeah, I mean, if we learned anything from the game yesterday, is that if you're able to deal with the tawns, like clearly the game becomes considerably easier.
Right. That's the big trick, though, right? Can you kill the tawns before they murder you?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure the answer is yes.
Well, you're gonna have to. Operative Luke's gonna have to put that backpack on and
Oh yeah,
go down.
he's gonna have to put
I
the
mean,
other 600 points of the list on his back and carry it across the finish line.
do you have tenacity?
No.
Okay, so he can't one-shot Tauntaun unit.
Not with a single
Son of
attack. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
do it with Son of Skywalker, but yeah, not with single
Mhm.
attack. So I'm gonna have to chip him a little bit.
I see a Son of Skywalker in your turn 2 or 3 in your upcoming match. I think.
I mean,
if like you're gonna win that match, like that's what you need, an effective Son of Skywalker like early on. I think.
oh yeah,
Unless he plays super conservatively.
right, which is possible. Kingsley's very good at showing restraint and not going in until absolutely necessary. So
He actually did do that in the casted game. When you think he was going to play No Time, he played Save Our Skins and popped the uplink early, and then like did this stuttering kind of reposition where the uplink taunt took one move, triggered a standby to clear the way for the other two sets of tauntauns. So it did the single move shoot, took the standby back, recovered, and then the other two came in and they formed like this line, uh, all like parallel to each other. Either one on the one side in heavy cover, one on the left side in heavy cover, one in the middle getting cover from the other tauntauns, and they all just went in together, and it was just like it's really clean was what impressed me about it. The positioning was very clean and very organized.
yep.
And I think that's something Kingsley is really good at, is having an organization to the way that he deploys his units. So if there's anything to learn there, it's doing that is crucial.
I think just in that vein, his match before this one, I forget who he was playing.
Pagoda Barbada.
Pagona
Yeah.
Barbada, yeah.
And like, so I didn't watch the tail end of the game because I like watched the first 3 turns and was like, wow, okay. But like, it seemed like Pagana did like just about everything right, and he like set Kingsley up in this like disarray corner of the board that was like looked like the worst deployment I think I've ever seen someone have to deal with. And it was miserable. He had like tauntauns just like out of cover because there was no place to put them and there was no cover on the entry. And he was just really skillful about it. And I don't know. It's a good list. I guess we'll see how this pans out. And out to the heavyweights, Star Wars Legion 2019.
I will caveat this by saying that both of Kingsley's opponents had openings to win and they flubbed because of a choice they made.
Well,
Yeah, I mean that's how you lose, right? A choice you make ends up netting.
Yeah, but it's not like he had no shot.
Yeah,
is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. There were 2 very close games where it wasn't like a dice roll decided it. It was an actual choice that literally, if it had been made any other way, would have resulted in a W in the other column.
Correct.
Well, and I mean that's a Legion, right? Like,
yeah,
that's how it goes.
Right. Victory can escape you before you even realize it. Sometimes.
I'll tell you one thing: Technophobia did make me want to put Bosk on the table again.
He's so
yeah.
good, man.
He's
I've
really
been
good.
trying to tell everybody this for like the last 2 months. I'm like, I don't see Bosk anywhere, and I think you all have forgotten what that man can do.
He's awesome.
To people.
He's still my boyfriend.
Yeah.
I think I have a love triangle now between myself, Palpatine, Bosk, and Jedi Luke.
Yeah, I mean, he was never bad.
That's more than 3 people. How's that a triangle?
Is that a square, a love square?
A love square.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to resolve it. I got 3 months to figure it out.
You need a pentagon to give it some sort of tie break.
There you go. Count Dooku, maybe.
Dang.
The fact that you said that while I was thinking you were going to say that is crazy.
Hey, man.
Weird,
you know me. All right. Anyway, enough about that. Let's talk about... So we've talked a lot about my list. We actually had Kingsley on like a month ago at this point to talk about his list. So let's talk about the other 2 top 4 Invader lists real quick. So first we have Luke Cook, world champion Luke Cook. No surprise that he made top 4. So he's got an ATST.
This is a weird. I mean, I shouldn't say it's a weird list. It is clearly a variation on the Shoreline that I guess you could say abuses the relay mechanic probably to its fullest extent by kind of finishing the relay chain with the biggest, baddest thing you could put on the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, so let's talk about what's in here real quick. It's Krennic with aggressive tactics and strict orders, 3 shore troopers with T-21Bs, one of which has an astromech, 3 mortars with comms relays, 2 scout trooper strike teams with snipers, and an ATST with the Hammer's elite pilot, that's the surge pilot, the mortar, the twin light blaster, and link targeting array.
Yeah, I mean, he's essentially, I mean, on any given turn, if he plays standing orders, he hands out 4 surge tokens. He hands out 4 aim tokens.
Yeah.
and can automatically strip 3 suppression with strict orders.
Yeah, pretty good.
I mean, like, that's the power in this list for sure. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say about it.
It's it's a 10 activation ATST list with 3 shore troopers in it. So, like, if you try and engage this thing at range 3 or 4, it will just grind you into the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of feel like this list is probably, I mean, I think it's well poised against like the Shoreline meta generally, just because I think the ATST is a really good, like, hey, you have to deal with this, and it's just going to delete a shore trooper unit every turn if you don't. But I don't think this list is that particularly good against Tauntauns.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the terrain and where he can get that. Where he can, sorry, that's my cat literally knocking over a box. Actually, the box Dooku was in, I think.
It's okay, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
He's hard plastic.
Yeah. Actually, I think he's soft plastic, but
that's what I meant to say. Whatever the more robust plastic is for not breaking.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought. Tauntauns. Yeah, I guess it depends on what the terrain looks like and if you can get that ATST in there for blocking purposes. So actually, we actually know what map the semifinals are being played on. It's on a Naboo map called Theed, which is, of course, the city on Naboo. It's going to be interesting. There's definitely some chokes and stuff. So I'll be curious to see how.
I feel like the ATST is really, frankly, quite vulnerable to RAM. Just generally, that's more of a hunch than anything else. But I mean, like, it's not out of the question to get 3 or 4 crits in a melee charge.
Well, I think that's basically true. I think the issue there is that the Tauntauns are not engaged when they do that. And you've got 3 shore troopers, backing up the ATST. So, like, you're probably, even with 3 Tauntauns, not going to kill it in one turn. And then you get...
Doesn't the ST give it cover, though? Give them cover?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be light cover, but...
Yeah, 2 dodge tokens plus light cover is pretty good.
It is, but when you got 3 shores and an ATST shooting, at... Obviously, they wouldn't have light cover from the ATST. ATST backs up and shoots one. And then shores shoot the other 2. I think that's probably still a favorable trade for the ST. Like, I think it probably doesn't die, and you probably kill 2 Tauntauns. But maybe we'll find out. I think, actually, Ellis... Why don't we jump straight into Ellis's list? I think he only has 2 Tauntauns.
And Ellis is playing Luke, right?
No, he's playing Sabine.
He's playing Sabine.
No, I mean, Ellis is playing Luke Cook.
Oh, yes. Ellis is playing against Luke Cook.
There's only one Luke Skywalker in the top 4. Okay, there can only be one.
There seems to be a strong correlation between Star Wars fans and people named Luke for some reason.
Yeah, there's a lot of Luke.
Gee, I wonder why.
It's also a super reasonably common name. Yeah, so Ellis only has.
I'm just gonna name my first child Chewbacca.
I mean,
just to buck the trend.
Is it a common name because all of our dads like Star Wars?
That's also possible. Yeah.
Right.
I seriously considered naming my son Luke, not gonna lie. Anyway, all right, so Ellis's list. This is Ellis Priestley, by the way, one of the better players in the UK. We got Leia with Strict Orders, R2D2. Sabine with Hunter. That's an interesting one for Tauntauns, I guess. Recon Intel, the grappling line, and Darksaber. And then he's got 4 Naked Rebel Troopers, 3 Sniper Strike teams, and 2 Tauntauns, each with Tenacity and Comms Jammer.
12 activations. This is the world we live in now, guys. Isn't it fun?
Yeah, that's a lot of activations. I mean, this is kind of a spin on a triple Tauntaun list, except your third Tauntaun is Sabine.
Yeah, which I don't think is necessarily bad. I think 2 is enough to get the job done most of the time.
Yeah, especially when they're accompanied by Sabine with Darksaber.
Yeah, and I think the thing I like about this list, it's just so much. I feel that it is much more like just take all comers. Sabine can deal with a lot of things, and just her toolbox, specifically the way he's built her with grappling line, makes him able to deal with just far more threats that the normal triple tauns, like the normal triple tauns list is actually, I think, pretty narrow.
Yeah, I mean, it can deal with Luke, Jedi Luke.
So I just did some quick math off the cuff. The average activation count for the lists in the top 4 is 11 and a quarter.
So we've got 2 with 12. I have 11. And Luke has 10. Yeah.
I just, I know that there's been a lot of talk lately about, lower activation count lists are still good.
The bar has moved.
I think that maybe you can say that if you're within like plus or minus 1 of the average activations, but you can't play an 8 activation list fighting against something with 12 activations in it. Not from the get-go, at least.
No, I mean, your opponent's going to do literally 50% of their turn after you're done.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. And so this brings us to the question that I know that we all have been waiting to answer for the last month and a half. Are Naked Rebel Troopers the bee's knees?
I mean, I definitely think they're good enablers of the other great tools that Rebels have, which, we've essentially mentioned in all these lists, but R2, Sabine, Tauntauns, Luke, they're cheap. They can grab boxes. They're not terrible at suppressing things because they have black dice. They're not going to murder anything, but yeah.
Do you wish you didn't take your Z6s?
I don't feel like I can answer.
Just rub it in some more, man.
I don't feel like I can say yes after that game with Master of the Force Luke.
That's fine. I mean, I'm asking you to answer that question honestly.
I think if I was guaranteed to only be facing Empire opponents, I would say yes. I would rather just not have the Z6s. I think they're still good in Rebel matchups, even against Tauntauns. I guess we'll find out whether that holds up against Kingsley this week.
Sure.
So the short answer is I don't know. I've been building, doing a lot of list crafting without them and with the Naked Troopers. You can definitely get the activation count up, but I'm personally not a Tauntaun player. And, so that means that I'm using those points for things like ATRTs. And I don't know. I don't feel as good about that.
I have to agree with that sentiment. I think this is almost a unique symptom of tauntauns and getting yourself to the activation levels that you need to really succeed in that style. Um, Tauntauns, if you are activating last and you have that piece of line of sight blocking terrain to hide them behind, and you have 12 activations and your opponent has 10, if you lose priority, your tauntauns are immune to damage, basically, unless they have a standby in a good place. Um, then you first them in, or maybe like second them in, because you obviously want to hook up with a unit in the enemy camp that's already activated so they don't get shot again that turn, barring some crazy circumstance like force push, etc. um, but I have tried the naked trooper spam without tauntauns, and tauntauns are unique in that they are so fast and so threatening that they create a situation where they are in control of most of the board, and your opponent is like struggling to fight through this wall of 24 wounds with multiple dodges at a time, and you are just chilling in the backfield saying you can't get to where you need to get, and I'm just going to win on objectives because you are just pushed so far away from whatever key positions that you're on. I mean, if in that game with Kingsley and with Technophobia, you saw that he couldn't even capture his home objective for 5 rounds. Like, he captured his home key position on round 6, and in fact, he didn't even capture it. He just contested it. and the Tauntauns exert this huge pressure on the board that keeps your army from getting shot back. But if you don't have that kind of pressure piece, yeah, sure, you can hide, but your opponent is free to shoot your tiny core squads and just delete them. And
Or
then
take up
what?
positions, advance on the
Right,
table. Yeah.
exactly. And so they're free to like shoot you back, and then you can't fight because you can't trade. Right? They just delete you, and they take no damage, and they're like, well, that was easy because you exerted little to no pressure on them.
Yeah. So I think the short answer there is I think that it's possible that naked rebel troopers are tauntaun only.
It's possible.
Not certain, but I think it's possible just because of the unique
Yeah,
sort of board control that tauntauns give you.
right. And I mean, in the triple RT list I tried, it's not like I didn't have success, but that's because I had Luke and Sabine at the head of that list, who are their own kind of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was still able to get up to 11, which is pretty damn good, you know? So, again, I think it's an open question still. Tauntauns, though, huge beneficiaries if you can get to 12, and definitely would take the naked troopers to get to 12. No question.
Fair enough.
You guys got any other Invader League thoughts?
It'll be interesting. I'm excited to see a vehicle in the like real meta, even if it's mostly due to the fact that mortars are really good.
And more specifically, mortar relays.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, mortars are 41 points and
Yeah.
happen to pass their order token to something else.
Yep.
I mean, you know, um, so
It's the Imperial equivalent of a Rebel Trooper. It just shoots at range 4 and has suppressive and ignores dodges.
and has critical. Like
Right, exactly.
it's significantly better than a rebel trooper, and it's worth pointing out that I think its effective health is it's pretty close to a normal rebel trooper squad.
Yeah, it's
if not a little better.
no, it's
maybe not.
worse. Yeah,
Slightly
it's,
worse.
It's not by much though. Clearly, if you get Pearson involved,
Yeah.
like
It's like one hit worse.
yeah. But it's also worth noting that it's like not that hard to keep them in cover, as opposed to a lot of like emplacements, just because range 4 is really long.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. Anyways, so it'll be cool to see an ATSD get in there. I sort of hope the Tauntaun lists lose, but both of them just kind of like lose out. Sorry, Kingsley. Sorry, Ellis. But I think we want to see the good guys win.
That'd be fun to get a Worlds Final rematch too.
It would be. Which is certainly possible at this point.
It
There's
is.
what?
Yeah.
25% chance that ends up happening.
Yeah, I mean, all other things being equal, I think that's how it works.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, good luck to all those guys. And let's
And
move
we'll
on.
see you in hell.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to Legion 101.
It's time for Legion 101. Class is in session.
So we're going to talk about command cards today, and more.
Are we talking about specific command cards?
No, we're going to talk generally about command cards and when to play them and how to A, force your opponent to play certain ones, and B, try and anticipate what they have and what they're going to play. And essentially just, I mean, the core question we're going to try and answer in this segment is sort of in the abstract, but it's going to be like, when do I play a certain command card?
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting that unlike a lot of our 101 segments that are like pretty based in factual reality, in that like this is what this unit does and these are the numbers and things of that nature, when it comes down to when to play command cards, a lot of it is what you could call game theory. um, there's no hard and fast rules a lot of the time. I mean, there are situations that come up where like there is a correct command card play 90% of the time in a certain situation or whatever. But there are a lot of situations where you can mess with your opponent and gain some benefits.
Yeah, so let's talk first generally about pips. And when you want to lose priority and when you want to win priority, and when maybe you don't care one way or another.
Yeah, and I think the best way to learn how to kind of use and abuse the number of pips on your cards is to pretend like all of your command cards don't have text, and that the only thing that you're really leveraging when you're playing a 1 pip card is that I get to go first, as opposed to I get to play Son of Skywalker and attack you twice. Because a lot of people will read the text on Son of Skywalker and say, oh my god, I get to make 2 attacks, that's really good and really powerful. And don't get me wrong, it is. But the best part of that card is that Luke Skywalker gets an order and he gets to go first.
Yep.
So, with keeping that in mind, I think the situations we want to call out, at least at the beginning here, is you want to put your opponent in a situation where they need to play a low pip initiative card in order to get themselves out of a situation that is bad for them. So if that means um, you know, kind of as your last activation on a given turn, um, kind of putting Luke Skywalker in a position where at the beginning of next turn he could force push something around the corner and eat it for free without being threatened. That means you are not, if you're able to build that situation out, you are not pressured to play a 1 pip command card, because sure, Luke could eat that unit for free, but you also are still going to be able to do things with him if he doesn't do that immediately. Like you can play Return of the Jedi on that turn, and if they don't go first with that unit, you can still do that. But if they do play like a 1 pip ambush and give that unit in order to get them out of there, you've generated tempo in that they now have one less 1 pip to compete with your Luke 1 pips when the time comes to start having the brawl, the initiative brawl that you want to be having.
Yeah, and it's important to sort of think this over like 6 turns, and kind of generally, usually the way that I approach it in my brain is that unless you're creating a situation like on the first turn where you can, your opponent's deployed something out of position and you can like delete a unit with the long range unit on the first turn, usually I try and lose priority early and then win priority late. And if you can create those situations like you described, Mike, on turns 2 or 3, where you're burning your opponent's low pips and essentially ensure on turns 4, 5, and 6 that if you need to win priority, you can. That's like the ideal command card setup as far as sequencing is concerned. So, it obviously depends on which characters you have too. Like if you've got Krennic or Dooku who have cunning, that significantly increases your options for winning priority because you're guaranteed to win ties.
It does. And it also, I mean, in kind of flipping the page on those two characters, if you're playing against Krennic and Dooku, it's even more important to put them in situations like that because you want to get those cunning cards out of their hand before it actually like destroys you. Because those cards, if they have them on the pivotal turn, will completely turn the game state around because they get to go first and you don't get to have any say about that.
Yep.
That can be tough to do sometimes, but like making Krennic burn Voracious Ambition because you've put a unit in a very exposed position early in the game where you can play Assault and not worry about it, is huge. So when it comes time for you to engage with whatever focus piece you're engaging with, you at least have a 50-50 roll off, and it's completely possible they don't have any 1-pips left.
Yeah, and it's also important to know or be able to predict which 1-pips your opponent has, particularly if they have multiple characters. Because there's situations like if your opponent is running R2, like if they're running a list like what Kingsley has, which is essentially R2 Leia Tauntauns, right? There's 3 possible 1-pips there. There's ambush, blast off, and coordinated bombardment, and 2 of those cards cannot give orders to Tauntauns without uplinks, right?
There's the Special Forces one too, Kyle.
Oh yeah, okay. But realistically speaking, you're looking at one of those 3 options, right?
Yeah.
So if you can predict either like your opponent's already played ambush or you think they don't have it, then you know that like if your opponent needs to win priority to do something specific with a Tauntaun, they're not going to be able to play a 1-pip to do it.
Unless they've got an uplink or something.
Unless they have uplink, right? Which most of the time there's at least one Tauntaun with an uplink in those kind of builds. But it helps to know like which cards, this is especially true if your opponent has like an operative, because they can't give, if they've got operative cards, those can't give orders to other units outside things like entourage or uplink. So if your opponent's running Boba Fett, right, and he doesn't have any sort of special tricks to give other things orders, you know that if he plays 1-pip to win priority, and he doesn't need priority with Boba Fett, he needs it with some other unit, he's gonna have to rely on a bag pull to do that thing. So that's also useful to know.
Yeah, and in a situation like you described, where let's say your opponent has an operative, specifically like Boba or Bosk, where all of their command cards strictly give orders to those characters. Like Sabine's a little different. She's got a little bit more flexibility because Legacy of Mandalore obviously hands out more than one order token and more than just to her. But if you put them in a situation where they have to burn like a neutral push or a neutral ambush, and they can't put an order token on their operative, it's also important that you've created a opportunity to catch that character sort of flat-footed if they kind of move him out and expose them to a couple squads or whatever, where you can move and shoot or whatever, and you can. So okay, great, so they activated that other unit and got it out of there, but now you have the opportunity to shoot at a Boba or a Bosk who they don't get to choose when they get to go anymore. And that's also very powerful.
Yep. Yeah, the bottom line here is like on the early turns, you want to be creating situations where your opponent's units are exposed, and that they have to spend some kind of action economy or pip economy to save that unit.
And kind of going back to where I started, like treat your cards like their text is blank. I think a lot of people do not play standing orders enough. If you watch a lot of like high level games, you'll see people play standing orders on like turns 1 through 3 sometimes, just because they need to go last.
Yep.
And that's very important. So, and if you're treating your cards like they have no text, that's a lot easier to do. You're like, oh, well, I'm not really wasting an effect this turn. And a lot of times you should kind of look at the effects on those cards as bonuses and not so much as like, don't get me wrong. A lot of the times those plays can be high tier, but like cards like Master of Evil, like you're not always going to get to lay down a bunch of suppression tokens. And sometimes the dodge token is good enough, you know? And in any case, play a few games like that and see how it goes.
Yeah, and that's
Right. I think the point is well made. Sorry, Kyle. I think the point is well made. Like the optimal play is based on the context, right? So this is true for Master of Evil, like what Mike was saying, where it's like, yeah, maybe that suppression drop is nice, but it's not like if the position demands that you play your 3-pip card, for some other element of it, I wouldn't hesitate, just to say, okay, fine, I'll just have to skip whatever this game, because the position demands that I play this 3-pip card so that I lose priority, so that I don't take more damage than I need to. I think it's very contextual. It's not strictly um, effects based, like Mike was saying, and I definitely want to second what he's saying about treating your command cards as if they're blank, because more often than not, the sort of global state of the game, the the ability to go last, the ability not to expose yourself to damage, is much more important than any one effect.
Yeah, and sort of just a slight segue point too. There is like, as far as you mentioned, Master of Evil, Mike, and like saving a command card for a home run play that may never come.
Yeah.
Like as far as text effects are concerned, generally, you're like, unless you're certain that a situation is going to present itself late in the game where that command card can have a better effect, like you want to use them as soon as they're useful. Son of Skywalker is a great example of this. I tend to play Son of Skywalker as soon as I can safely delete a unit with it.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as the text can like take effect and has a like physical impact on the game, like great, go for it.
Yeah,
play the card.
Right.
But like I've seen too many games where Vader gets left out in the open because he didn't have a dodge token and he dies. Well, you lost Master of Evil anyways, so I mean that's like a kind of a niche case, I guess, or one that is a little bit obvious, but I mean, playing it's like playing Sabine's 2-pip card on turn 1. Like, yeah, you could save that for the recover action, but like throwing down her symbol or whatever it is, just like as a global game effect, that's a card. It's like one of a few cards where you like might want to play that on turn 1 as opposed to playing standing orders. It's and even then maybe not, but there are a few cards that operate in that fashion.
Well, and that's a good example too, specifically just as far as like if you're running lists with multiple focus pieces. Luke Sabine is kind of the token example there, but that's a card that does not give an order to Luke. And when I'm running Luke Sabine, it's a card that doesn't win priority, and it's a card that doesn't give order to Luke. So, first turn is actually a good time, at least as far as like pip and orders are concerned, to play that card, because like if you pull Luke from the stack on the first turn, it's not usually the end of the world. You're probably making a positioning move up against some kind of line of sight blocker anyway. So like that's a good time to get a card out of your hand that doesn't give him an order and doesn't win you priority. So I find myself, at least when I'm playing Luke Sabine, playing
Symbol of
2-pip Symbol of Rebellion. Yeah, on first turn, just to get that graffiti token down and to get that that 2-pip out of my hand, so that later in the game I can play those 1-pips and I can play the orders, My Ally, Legacy, and Return of the Jedi, that give orders to each other. So
I mean, I just run push.
that's fair.
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm gonna be that guy and be like, I just wrote push.
But I think that kind of speaks to what we're talking about, though, right? Is like sometimes you would just rather have the text on the card be blank.
Exactly.
Like yeah, Symbol of Rebellion's text is like really good, but like you kind of just want to push in that list because you would rather have 2 orders on 2 focus pieces.
Right, you'd like the security that it provides, other than just this effect that's like, maybe that's okay. Maybe Sabine needs this recovered this game. Maybe she doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a take it or leave it sort of thing, because the effect is not quite. I don't want to say good enough, because it's an amazing card effect, but you're right. It's the security you get by having the 2 orders under focus pieces.
And I think the main thing that we're really speaking to when we're talking about card effects versus, blank cards like assault, push, and ambush is that assault, push, and ambush are all consistent. Like you know what you're getting, right? And with these card text abilities that are significantly more narrow, like a 2-pip that only gives an order to an operative like Sabine, or a 3-pip like Line and Wait that only gives a token to Bosk or whatever, like it's significantly limiting your options. And that's not to say those cards aren't good, but they certainly are significantly less flexible.
Right, we saw that in Kingsley's game. I'm going to keep bringing this up. He had to play Save Our Skins on the second turn because he needed another 3-pip. But one of those orders was stapled to Leia, so he had to blow an uplink early. And that represented a little bit of a risk. He had to actually play even more conservatively because he couldn't take a second copy of Assault.
Right.
He had to take this other 3-pip that was actually kind of worse in his list because there were no other choices.
Yeah, that's a situation where if you could take Assault twice, you would do it.
Yeah, 100%.
It's kind of weird. Like not to call it. I mean, I'm gonna call out this card specifically, but Saber Skins, like the card effect, like if it was any character other than Leia, it'd be bananas. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah.
if that card said hand out 3 orders on one of your activations this turn, you can like just go with 2 units. Like that would be bananas, right?
Let's errata common cause to do that because then that card would get played.
Doesn't Common Cause do that already?
It does, but it doesn't. It only issues 2 orders. It doesn't issue 3.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's a 1-pip that issues 2 orders.
Yes, I mean, like,
yeah, it's pretty sick. Yeah.
I mean, we're starting to see Chewbacca be played a little bit more. It's possible that especially with more room in these Rebel lists where people are playing Rebel troopers, we might see that more often. I think that card. If Chewbacca was playable, that card is like probably top 5 command cards. Pretty easy.
Wait. We just need to take battle meditation on Luke. So we can give Chewie's order to someone else or something.
No, that's not how battle meta works.
That's not how it works. Okay, then we need to take a comm relay on Chewie, I guess. I don't know. We can't, of course.
But like, I mean, that card is super powerful. At a point in the game where
dope.
You win priority and you get to go with Luke, delete a unit, and then Chewie, delete a unit, like that's real good.
Yeah. I wish it worked. I wish I could actually play that list. But you're right. Functionally, yeah, it's crazy good.
Yeah, I mean,
and yeah, Leia's effect if it wasn't on her own card. I mean, yeah, it'd be really good.
I guess to get back to the discussion at hand, though, as far as command cards go, it's a little bit hard to talk about the kind of complexities of this because it's really very dependent on the situation. Like if you're able to eliminate an enemy character, it significantly increases your options as to like how you can manipulate your opponent into playing cards. If you kill their Veers and all of a sudden they only have the operative cards left, or they only have the neutral generics, and which neutral generics they've played, like that they're pretty much gonna be either stuck on standing orders or push or reptilian rampage or whatever. You should start make sure that you have that in your calculus for setting up for next turn, and picking which units that you are going to intentionally kind of pick to expose.
All right, you guys got any more? That was a lot on a very abstract topic, but you guys got any more on command card timing?
I mean, I feel like this is something that you can kind of write a book on. Maybe this is something that would be good to write an article on, as far as like, here's a scenario and let's go through the game theory of like what you should do in this scenario. So maybe that's something we'll explore at a later date.
Yeah, it's like a tactics puzzle.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, we got a little time left. Should we talk about everyone's favorite satellite dish with
everyone's favorite satellite dish?
Yeah.
Do you mean everybody's favorite trash can?
No, the FD cannon.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about R2
No.
when you said dish. He's got a little dish antenna thing that he pops up and spins, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. That's accurate.
Okay.
But I mean, it wouldn't be a very interesting segment if we were just talking about R2's dish, right?
I don't know.
I mean, maybe it
I
would
mean,
be.
that's how. All's R2 is a dish, as far as I'm concerned.
A tasty dish.
No.
Let's talk about the FD cannon.
All right, go for it.
So I'm using one in Invader League. It's pretty good with range 5.
Yeah, I
It's the
mean,
best sniper out there. It's
yeah, yes,
it's,
that's right, right? You know, I mean, it costs what, 20 points more than a sniper
22.
nowadays, 22 or something.
22.
You know, for 1.5 snipers, you get an extra 3 dice and basically an aim token on every shot. I mean, I guess you're getting aim tokens anyways, but aim tokens are a little bit more valuable when you definitely have dice to reroll with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's 5 dice. It's no pierce, but and no sharpshooter, but it's 5 dice. Same range. Stationary, which isn't ideal, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a one of, it's not bad.
When you got range 5, you don't need to go much of any place.
Yeah, I mean, so I actually, you know, with all of the changes that when all the changes with the sniper changes specifically, I've actually found myself deploying closer to the back of my deployment zone. And I think this sort of speaks to the FD cannon a little bit as well. Is that I play Imperial, so clearly I generally am either equal on range or have a range advantage most of the time. So what I find myself doing a lot is deploying intentionally kind of at or around range 5 or farther away from my opponent if I can, so that I can kind of dictate when my units enter into combat range and who gets to make those shots. So bringing this back around to the FD turret, I think the FD turret is like pretty much outside of sniper is the only good rebel option to kind of expose lists to make them kind of back up like that.
Yeah, and it's notable that, besides snipers themselves, it's the only range 5 option in the game. So at the moment, like, rebels are the only faction that can field 4 or more range 5 units, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's the DC-15s on the take that clanker's turn, but that's kind of a waste.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Like, just as a general rule, like, you can create at least a temporary, like, you have a range bubble in theory where you have a slight advantage over an Empire gun line if you run triple sniper and an FD.
yes.
And you're
Dish network new meta.
I mean, I don't know that I would take more than one. So let's talk since we are talking about the FD. Let's talk about what upgrades to put on it. Maybe its strength and weaknesses, and then like how to run it. Do you guys have strong feelings about upgrades?
Naked.
I also agree. Naked. So it does have a comm slot and a generator slot. The comm slot, I think you could make a case. Like, I've seen people field it with uplink or link targeting array, but for link targeting array to work, you have to give it orders. And at least in the list that I field it with, it's like I don't have the command cards to give it orders. So
Well, so I think I've seen this used a couple different ways. First, I think let's call out HQ uplink, because I think that it was important when it was at range 4, because you weren't always guaranteed that something was going to enter your threat range by the time the FD activated, and that made HQ uplink like pretty important. Now with range 5, you're gonna have something in your threat range.
Right.
just about always, right? You're gonna shoot at something even if it's a little suboptimal. So uplink's less necessary. I've seen link, target, and array be put to pretty good use alongside vets that didn't take a Mark II and took an FD turret instead. Um, I don't know how much merit that has to it because I still don't think vets are like super great, but I do think that's a little bit of a wombo combo, similar to what, um, similar but not the same as to what the Imperials are doing.
It's also, as far as link targeting array is concerned, it's a 5 dice pool, which is a decent size, but it's not like an ATSD pool, which is like 7 to 9 dice. One in my experience, one aim token, the one you get from the aim action you're taking, is usually enough to get like 4 to 5 hits. So it's possible that second aim token you're re-rolling like your 5th dice, which is a blank, but you're not going to be getting as much value out of that second aim token as you are out of the first one. So I think if you could guarantee getting in an order every turn, it'd be a good buy anyway, because it's only 5 points and aim tokens are real good. But I just, at least in the builds that I run, I can never seem to get it orders on more than 1 or 2 turns, and I think it's just fine just aim shooting whenever you happen to pull the token from the bag. At least I've found that to be the case. So
yeah, that's kind of the rebel downfall, is that we're a little bit hard up for available orders usually. Mm-hmm. We're not organized like the Imperial Army is.
Hey man, for all the hate that comms relay mortars get, it is like, it does feel super Imperial.
Yep, it totally does.
It is super thematic.
Like rebels, you can mostly only get orders to your characters, and you really only care about your characters for orders. So except tauntauns, but generally speaking, that feels right. Right? Like you've got sort of the disorganized rabble around your characters.
I mean, let's be honest, man. Tauntauns are the focus piece. Luke is just a sideshow.
And people aren't even taking Luke these days, other than crazy people that don't take tauntauns.
Yeah.
But don't worry, Luke players can't complain because we can take tauntauns. Anyway, the FD cannon is, I think, best, without anything on it. Generators are cool. They got a slight points drop. I think you have 7 points better spent there. I don't think adding suppressive really grants you a whole hell of a lot when you consider the options that other factions have. Maybe in a mirror match.
Yep.
But if you're using it to shoot a vehicle, they're kind of working at cross purposes, because your impact is being used against a vehicle and your suppressive doesn't work. I mean, maybe you're taking it for the extra dice to maybe get more crit results. I don't know.
I think it's worth noting that I think the value on the generators, specifically on the FD turrets, has kind of gone down since HQ uplink is less necessary. Back when HQ uplink, you were taking it on the FDs because they needed it. Tacking a generator on was kind of a freebie because you were generally recover shooting as opposed to aim shooting.
Yep.
And so you were refreshing it every turn. And for 7 points to add, 12 white dice to your total pool over a game, like, that's not bad.
Yeah,
that's not terrible.
Right.
And 6 additional suppression tokens, like that's pretty good. But now that you're not always recovering and you're taking an aim token, I think it's not as viable.
Yeah, I think if you got 7 points lying around, it's a decent upgrade, but I never seem to have that. So.
Yeah, I never have 7 random points just lying around, and if I did, I would use it for a bid.
Look, man, when we're maxing lists out at 12 activations, things get tight.
Yeah, you kind of need every point. Yeah, every point you can get. You want to talk about how to use them?
Yeah, so turn 0 with them is really important. All right. Like they're stationary, so where you stick them is what are you guys making faces at me for?
I don't know. Somebody's got music playing right now.
Yeah, it's my wife's watching TV downstairs. Yeah.
Jeez.
I tried to turn this thing down. It's super sensitive.
All right. That's fine.
Anyway, Yeah, like once you stick it somewhere, hang on one second.
All right. So what Kyle's trying to say is that the FD turret is really important where it goes.
we
And then you just fucking need to stick it
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah.
Put it on the board.
All right, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Balance it on top of the tiniest like piece of terrain you can find.
Yeah, I've become kind of notorious for doing that. I think I actually put it on the ground in my last game, but yeah.
You did. It was behind
Yeah,
a statue.
But yeah, so due to the overhang rule, like if it sits, it fits basically. If you can balance it on something, it's legal. As long as it's not on top of lava or something like that, obviously. Currently. So yeah, it you want it to have, so there's two things I think about with deployment for the FD turret. You want it to have a good view of the objectives, wherever those are. And of course, when you're vetoing cards, you don't know where those are going to be, but safe bet is the middle of the table is going to be important. And also, you want it to be in a position that's not like overly exposed, because you can't retreat it, right? It's stuck there. So I've actually found it to be, in some cases, a little bit of a liability, specifically on evaporators, where it often comes down to points. Because, like, suppose you get in a situation, and I was actually in this situation in my last game, where you delete an activation early. Like, suppose you kill a mortar, that's 36 points, right? If you assume that everybody's VAPs are going to be, your home VAPs are going to be repaired, you're up by 36 points. But if you just run away and hide behind a big cliff, your FD turret can't run away and hide behind a big cliff. It's going to be wherever you left it. So, your opponent can then focus it down, and suddenly they're up 70 points, right? So, like, you got to make sure you put it in a spot where you can protect it if you get in a situation like that, but where it can also affect the battle. So range 5 makes that a lot easier. That was much harder to do when it was only range 4, but definitely definitely don't put it in a spot where it's just going to die, even if it's a great vantage point, which I also did in one of my stream games. So
right, I think you put it on like a overhanging off a building roof, and he just like alphaed it off the board, like backfire power shores.
Yeah, it was one of those situations where, like, I was like, this is great, I can see his whole army, but of course that meant that his whole army could see my FD turret and nothing else.
Yeah, so it was like the only thing he could shoot, and you just blew it up, or he just blew it up. But I mean, I was gonna say, like, you say, oh, put it somewhere you can protect it. Well, in the game after that, you put Luke in between your FD cannon and your opponent's army. So if the opponent tried to engage your FD cannon, they had to walk into Luke.
Yep.
So you interpose a threat between your FD cannon
that's the
and
ideal.
That's the best way to use Darth Vader, man.
Mm-hmm.
Hidden tactic right there.
Yep.
Special tactics.
Project threat. Yeah. Yeah, that's the ideal setup, right? You have a threatening unit like that you can put sort of halfway in between. And then your opponent, if they stay at range 5, they'll just get aim shot with your snipers and your FD. And if they move up, they'll get hacked to pieces by Luke or Vader or whatever. Obviously, Empire doesn't have an FD, but there are other similar analogous units to set up that situation with Empire. So,
hey man, we have E-webs.
Shoes on the other foot now.
Yeah, and as far as like objectives are concerned, I like evaporators because it's a defensive objective for blue player. It's not great if you're red player with an FD on evaporators.
FD, but you're on breakthrough as red.
Yeah,
well, bad man.
It's worth noting that it might be worth forcing rapid reinforcements in that situation.
Right, if you can manage that, FD is great on rapid reinforcements. Like if your opponent is dictating the objective or the deployment, then you can usually force rapid reinforcements unless they cut it. But I don't think almost anybody cuts rapid reinforcements these days.
Yeah, I think you're either cutting limb viz or hostile environment generally.
Yep.
Like you're either good at you're good at one of those, but generally not both.
Yep.
Um,
I think that's
So.
accurate. Yeah.
I agree.
So yeah, usually Rapid's going to be there if you need to force it, which is great for an FD on any map because you can drop it wherever you want. One thing that I do when I roll up to a table is when I'm playing an FD, I immediately think about the deployment zones, and where each of them falls on terrain to see where I can put that FD, since it is locked in that spot for the entire game. So that's definitely, like, especially if you're a blue player, when you're picking a side, you need to be considering that.
Look for like an elevated spot so it gets vision, it gets cover.
Yep.
And how you're trying to push it as far forward yet as safely as possible to make sure it has a long way to shoot.
Yep.
And put it somewhere central so you can pivot to cover different lanes.
Oh yeah, and make sure to pivot it after you deploy it in the spot that you want it.
There you go. Yeah, make sure to actually like look at the arc lines and see where you're pointing your gun.
Yeah, another mistake I made.
Usually helpful.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I really like.
I mean, if this is all it takes to get to the top 4 of Invader League, I mean, what are y'all doing? Get on that.
Yep, FD equals win. No, I really like it now that it has range 5. I think that did a ton for it.
I mean, it certainly plays into your playstyle for sure.
It does. Yeah, Yeah. I mean, my specific playstyle is very defensive, so it seems appropriate. All right, you guys got any more FD thoughts?
I mean, there's not really much to talk about once you put it down.
Yeah, aim, shoot, whatever the best target is when you pull the token.
Yeah, I mean, sort of fire and forget. As far as Legion stuff goes, that's fire and forget. I think the FD is pretty much it.
Yep.
Oh, if you're playing snipers, I don't recommend showing both models to the FD cannon. No, I'll just say that much. It's anti-recommended. It's a fast way to lose them.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting that snipers are pretty good against the FD.
Yes,
less good than they used to be though, because it can always shoot them back if they can shoot it. So
yeah,
yep.
Can't shoot all 3 of them though.
No, yeah, like if you got 3 and you're corner peeking like you should be, it's going to kill one model on the return fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can stack the damage on, like, say, post max firepower, post coordinated bombardment, might as well try. Yep. Hunter works against it too.
Yep.
Because it's it's an emplacement trooper.
Oh yeah, the elusive lizard known as Bosk.
Yeah,
wrecks it pretty hard. So
every time we say Bosk, I feel like David dies a little bit inside as he imagines 5 natural born crits rolling into his legs.
Yeah, just yeah, unburies a deep seated wound I have.
Yeah. Also, Death Troopers with Hunter eat it pretty hard.
I think that's going to be a thing.
I mean, it's kind of already been a thing, I think, with people trying to shoehorn a lot of shores and mortars and relays into the list. They've been cutting Hunter a little bit. But, I mean, I think Death Troopers still want it. Like, if I'm building a Krennic list, that's like the first 6 points that I'm spending on, things beyond, like, heavy weapons and medics.
Yeah.
Probably.
I think they want... Do they have 2 training slots? I think they do.
They do, yeah.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Probably Hunter and offensive push.
Yeah, if you got the points, yep.
Yeah. And generally, they're going to be your most expensive unit, so you might as well make them as effective as possible.
Make them real good.
Yeah, if they're going to cost 123 points, they might as well cost 129 points, right?
Right. Like, whatever.
Well, if it significantly enhances them, sure. Yeah.
Hey, man.
Don't water down their efficiency.
Aim token. The thing is that, like, on most units, aim tokens take them from being, like, good to, like, a little above good. Aim tokens for Death Troopers is, like, good to please go home, I'm scared, like...
Yeah.
It's yeah, I don't know.
It's that whole 1 aim counts for 2 thing they got going on.
Yeah.
With precise.
Precise 2 is pretty good when you got aim tokens.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially on those range 2 shots. I'll just go ahead and reroll these 4 blanks.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, if you can stack up like multiple aim tokens between like spotter and offensive push and hunter on like a 12, is it 12?
It's 11.
No, it's 11.
Yeah.
yeah, it's
But
11.
still, I mean, like 9 of them are white dice, so you know, it's just a really. It's like if you put a Z6 in a DLT squad.
Yeah.
Then you have the grenade config to deny cover.
Yes.
Also brilliant.
Yeah. Although
Though
hard to use
the
in
amount of times
practice.
Yeah,
the thing is,
unfortunately,
like, how often do you take the recover action with Death Troopers?
not often.
So the only time that I've like generally ended up using that is if I've been running them with Veers and they like fetch a free recover out of Imperial Discipline or whatever. I'm like, oh great, I can flip the thing, but it's tough to do in practice.
Middle management used to do that a lot,
Yeah, totally.
but that's kind of fallen out of favor because instead of taking Veers, you just take a fourth short trooper.
Yeah. I mean, there are times
Hey.
like if you're already at range 2 of your target, and they're in heavy cover, recover to flip the config to blast and use it. But I think outside that, like, you're never going to start that way. So
No, never. It's a rare thing. I wish it was used more because it's really good.
Yep.
But it's range 2, and the game is a range 3 game. So
I mean, I think it's worth noting that the last few games I've played with Death Troopers, I found myself like 2 turns in, and like I didn't actually tap my suppressive gun. I really should have just put this on the blast side to start with. I haven't found myself finding when those situations are going to occur before the game kind of walks through turns 1 and 2. But sometimes I find myself, my first shot with the DTs on turn 1 ends up being a range 3, and I don't need the config. And I was like, oh, well, I really wish I put this on the blast config to start the game. So I think that's something to consider, as far as where you're starting from.
Yep. All right. Any final thoughts?
FD's good. Use it.
So are tauntauns.
Maybe we'll get some preview articles this week besides paint sets.
Hey, speaking of paint sets, those have actual colors in them.
Yeah, no, so I'm actually like sort of vaguely excited about the paint sets. I know people were expecting some like big unit reveal. And maybe we'll still get that. But like, this is a hobby game and FFG doesn't really do hobby, so the fact that they're actively trying is a little encouraging. I don't know how many of those they're actually going to sell.
No, I mean, I still think you go out and buy like the Army Painter Mega Set or whatever. It's a much better value. Because it's the same paint.
It's the same paint. It's just labeled differently.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's good for people starting out. Like, this is like, you buy your core set and you're like, oh, somebody, if you're putting Star Wars Legion on your Christmas list, right? You're like, okay, get me a core set and get me the, Republic paint set that goes along with it. And this doesn't really apply to like us people that have poured hundreds and thousands of dollars into this game. But,
yeah, I've got a huge library of paint already. I don't need like a but
it's like,
yeah.
But I will say, I think that these paint sets were way more on brand in that there were like the Stormtrooper paint set came with like 8 shades of black. I guess black. I don't. Black's not technically a color, I guess, but it was like there was 8 shades of gray in there.
Yeah, extremely dark gray.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, this is cool, I guess. But these sets at least have like blues and vibrant greens and some reds and stuff, so which is nice.
Yeah. And I think like if you're moving over to Legion from another game and you've never done like a hobby game like Legion, I think it's fine.
Yeah. This isn't geared at people listening to this podcast. Like, people listening to this podcast are going to be like, "What? We didn't get a new unit?" Just because, like, if you're listening to this podcast, you already played this game.
Hey, what's the next unit I can buy to dunk my opponents with at the local game store? That's what we're that's what we're listening to this podcast for.
I hope
If
that's
you
not the
haven't
only
figured
thing.
it out yet, it's tauntauns, by the way.
Brutal. Well, yeah. Hopefully, we'll get some unit previews too. That was rumored. So, maybe by the time you listen to this cast. But anyway, Adepticon folks, watch out for that article. Go in there and sign up if you have an invite. So, yeah. Final thoughts?
Are you gonna stretch this out any longer?
Hey, we got 1 minute until. Okay, there we go. We just hit 1:15. That's a nice round number.
Nice stall.
I like nice round numbers. So you can blank stare. It's supposed to be like an accountant joke, but
Okay.
Hand waving from the booth.
Did you know Chuck Norris can do audit and consulting work for the same client?
Whoa!
You're done.
All right, let's crash this plane here. We are the Notorious
with
Scoundrels.
no survivors.
We are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
I'm David.
And we'll see you next week.
It doesn't matter who we are. What matters is our plan.
Join us next week for another episode of the Notorious Scoundrels.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.